Mark Kushner's TED Talk on architecture talks about a pendulum that exists in architecture between innovation and symbolism. Innovation being something that is done by architects when they invent a new style of architecture, and symbolism being something for that is believed or liked by the general public, something that innovation over time becomes established, which means it becomes accepted, and then finally it becomes a symbol by the general public because and they ended up liking that style of architecture. And over time, this symbolism um, becomes almost like disliked by architects, or they just look to innovate on it, better said. And you have this constant pendulum swinging between innovation and symbolism, innovation and symbolism. And so this is what his TED Talk is talking about: this style, this not style, this thing that exists in architecture, constantly throughout all of human history, and how this pendulum might have just ended, or has ended, better said. And he begins by talking about architecture style from the 70s called brutalism. And he points out how brutalist architecture was an innovation of the 70s, which is seen as cold and uninviting by the general public. However, over time, this cold, uninviting brutalist style becomes accepted by the general public. And the reason it becomes accepted is because it gets changed a bit over time. So let's start in the late 80s. In the 90s, you had neon colors, pastel colors added to these big brutalist objects, which makes them more inviting, more friendly by people. You start having things like fake Paris in Las Vegas, where you have like the Eiffel Tower, you have Mediterranean style, which you find here in Coral Gables. And so the architectural pendulum has swung from innovation to symbolism, accepted. And then in the 90s, once again, you have the pendulum swing once more from innovation from symbolism towards innovation. And that innovation is deconstructionism. Deconstructionism in the 90s, once again, is a new invention by architects. And because of the innovation, it's not really quite accepted by the public. They don't quite understand it or what it means. It's kind of architecture that's like all over the place. You have roofs that look like floors, floors that look like roofs, columns, they're diagonal. Things don't make sense. And so the pendulum starts to swing a bit more the other way in the late 90s with something that, as he says, was amazing. And that is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao by Frank Gehry. And the reason this museum was amazing, well, the reason it's amazing that the Guggenheim Museum got accepted or became a symbol for architectural style of the 90s, deconstructionism, is how it got accepted. And the reason it got accepted was mass media. And this changes everything. As he goes on to point out, mass media made the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao become instantly accepted as something that represents culture and tourism. And so you have people all over the world, mayors all over the world, or governments all over the world, start to see this style of architecture that is represented by Frank Gehry's Guggenheim Museum Bilbao as something that's going to bring the city, or to make the city look like a place of culture, a place of tourism, a place that is new and happening. If your city has something that's like the Bilbao, it's new and happening. It's the new thing that everyone needs to go to, everyone needs to see, and that makes the city seem like it's the future, like it is in the future. And the more important thing is how it happened, mass media. And this mass media made the pendulum swing very quickly from innovation to symbolism. And eventually, as mass media becomes more and more prevalent, this pendulum starts swinging faster and faster and faster and faster. Innovation, symbolism, until you can't even tell the difference. When are we at innovation phase of architecture? Where are we in the symbolism phase of architecture? And he goes on then to point out that this is going to change things. Because of this now faster moving pendulum, where there's no real difference, you no longer have something, you're not going to longer have like a history of architecture. You're going to have constant new architecture, acceptance of architecture, new architecture, acceptance of architecture, because mass media makes it so architects and the general public can work together at the same time. Um, People are able to work with architects now. So he gives an example of a a beachside resort store that's going to be um, a beachside resort, a beachside building is going to be built, and how this building, before it's even made, the architects of this building are showing renderings of this building to the general public, so the general public can get a feel for this building, so they can give their inputs to the building. And so even though the building hasn't even been made or started construction, the renderings of the building made by the architects are going out to the general public, and they get to see these renderings with people all over it, full of life in these drawings. And the general public just believes that this building is an established part of the community, even though it hasn't been built, which is kind of amazing and crazy to think about. And so this is something that's new, that's never happened before. And this means that architecture history could be coming to an end. It means that the pendulum between symbolism and innovation is no more. Things are going to be different now. Now the general public will be working with architects um, to show the new forms that they want. And this is something that's never happened before. The pendulum has come to an end.